When it comes to season leaders for the 2022 season, which Denver Broncos wide receivers will lead the team in receiving yards, receptions, and receiving touchdowns? Sayre, Bedinger, and myself, we break it down and we ponder who we think will lead in each category on today's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos country? Welcome back into a Wednesday episode, Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast here on the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day from the South Stands to the end zone. I'm your host, as always, Cody Roark, senior Broncos analyst at Mile High Sports, joined alongside by my co-host, Sayre Bedinger, site expert, predominantly orange.com. We also cover the Denver Broncos for the Locked On Network and 9 News and Broncos country. Thank you so much for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day. Free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format, or if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe or that follow button if you have yet to do so already, because Locked On Broncos brings you daily Denver Broncos news, content, and coverage every single day, all year long, because for the true fan, there is never an off season. Sayre, my friend, I had a fun time yesterday when we talked about the running backs, who we think is going to lead in rushing attempts, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, and even receiving touchdowns. But we're flipping the script a little bit today because now we're focused on the wide receivers with a brand new quarterback in Russell Wilson and a multitude of playmakers at that position. Tell you what, there's a lot we're going to break down today.
There is. This reminds me a lot of that 2012 offseason. I know we keep on bringing it up in reference to those Peyton Manning years when everybody just got exponentially better once he joined the roster. But doesn't it kind of give off some vibes? Remember what Eric Decker and Demaryius Thomas and all those guys, they were ready for a quarterback to come in and really help elevate their game. And I just can't wait to see what Russell Wilson does for guys like Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, all of these different guys, even Kendall Hinton, who we've been hyping up and who, frankly, Russell Wilson has been hyping up this offseason. So it's a fun group to talk about. It's fun to kind of think and project who could lead the team in certain categories. I'm excited to hear what everyone that's listening thinks, and I'm excited to hear what you think as well, for sure.
Well, let's begin the exercise right here, right now in Broncos country. Make sure you play along with us. If you're listening on your favorite podcast provider, you can tweet us on Twitter, or if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you comment in the live chat or comment in the comment section down below. Which Denver Broncos wide receiver will lead the team in receiving yards? Sayre, I'm going to be like Russell Wilson right now. I'm the quarterback. I'm going to throw this pass to you first off. Which Broncos receiver will lead the team in receiving yards, in your opinion, and why?
Well, Cody, if you're Russell Wilson, I got to be like Courtland Sutton and take that pass to the house, right? I mean, that's who I have leading this team in receiving yards. I just feel like it's time. Isn't it feel like it's time for Courtland Sutton's breakout 2.0? I mean, we think back to that 2019 season with Joe Flacco and Brandon Allen, Drew Lock throwing passes. Courtland Sutton was about as QB proof as it gets. He made the Pro Bowl that season. He was one of the most exciting pieces on that team that really wasn't all that good until the very end of the year when they started to catch fire a little bit. But it was really Courtland Sutton that was consistently throughout the year. Remember his long touchdown catch and run against the Chargers. And remember that amazing catch over Denzel Ward from Brandon Allen, I believe it was, against the Cleveland Browns. And then obviously with Drew Lock against the Chargers, and even drawing pass interference penalties that season. I mean, there was nothing that Courtland Sutton could do wrong that year. And it feels like a long time since then. So now with Russell Wilson throwing the passes, I have a feeling that Courtland Sutton is going to be the guy, the DK Metcalf of this offense. He's going to be the number one receiver. He's going to reestablish, like we talked about before, he's going to reestablish himself as the alpha of this group. So I see Courtland Sutton leading this team in receiving yards. But I think the fun part of this conversation is there's multiple potentially correct answers to this question. And so I know you have somebody a little different.
Well, like I said, I couldn't argue, and I wouldn't be surprised or shocked if it was Courtland Sutton who led the team in receiving yards this upcoming season, especially considering just how underutilized he was last year in this passing offense outside of that week 2 game where he exploded and was a legitimate wide receiver one. We saw it. I think that Courtland Sutton, the guy who's going to have 11 catches over 150 yards, I think he returns with a guy like Russell Wilson. But I wanted to be a little different here, right? Because I could have chosen Courtland Sutton too. I'm going to go and make the case here for Jerry Jeudy, and here's why, Sayre. Now, for Jerry and his game, we see it so often off the, whether he's on the ball or off the ball, on the football tape that we get, our access to throughout the season, Jerry is just always finding ways to get open. Like his ability to create separation within his route is great. But there's even times too, Sarah, where we have noticed him after he gets the ball in his hands, he's elusive. And that goes back to that Tennessee Titans game. He had that one catch, bounced back, stutter stepped, and reversed it for about another 20 yards to the left side of the field there. We saw it against the Dallas Cowboys. In my opinion, I think his yard after the catch ability will allow him the opportunity to maybe be one of those front runners for having the most receiving yards on the team because he's so dangerous with it. And we haven't seen him utilized in that way in this Broncos offense since he's been coming into the NFL. I mean, we saw him utilize that type of strength at Alabama. And granted, college football and defense is so different than it is at the NFL level. But Jerry Jeudy has not been in an ideal situation from a quarterback perspective than he is right now with what he does best on the football field. So in my opinion, I'm going to go with Jerry Jeudy. And here's one thing I also expect to see a lot of. I expect the Broncos, Russell Wilson in this offense to utilize a lot of those deep over route concepts, right? Because if you have Courtland Sutton or Tim Patrick or KJ Hamler extending the field and making defenses fear about the deep ball, you know what that opens up? That opens up the underneath, the intermediate to the deep middle of the field. And that's where I think Jerry Jeudy will eat a lot to have the bread and butter in his offense here this upcoming season. So I'm going to go with Jerry Jeudy and Broncos country. We are eager for your thoughts as to who you believe will have the most receiving yards for the Broncos here in 2022. Is it Courtland Sutton? Is it Jerry Jeudy? Is it Tim Patrick? Is it KJ Hamler? Heck, is it even Kendall Hinton? Let us know in the comment section down below or tweet us on Twitter at Cody Roark NFL, at Sayre Bedinger, at Lockdown Broncos. But Broncos country coming up here in just a moment. Sayre and I are going to get into a conversation as to which wide receiver we believe will have the most receptions this upcoming season and why. You get that coming up here in just a moment. But before you do that, let me tell you about rockauto.com, the sponsor of today's episode of the show. And if you need anything for your vehicle, rockauto.com has everything that you could be looking for your vehicle, whether it's a new brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, or even brand new carpet for your vehicle. And whether it's for your classic or your daily driver, rockauto.com has everything that you could be looking for. And the thing I love about rockauto.com is their site makes it super easy to find what you are looking for your vehicle. You can choose based on year, make, model, brands, specifications, and even the prices that you prefer, because prices at rockauto.com are always reliable, whether you're a professional or do-it-yourselfer. So go check out all the parts available for your vehicle today by going to rockauto.com, and make sure when you go to checkout, write Lockdown Broncos in there. How did you hear about us box? So that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. As we jump into the second half action on today's episode of Lockdown Broncos, once again, Broncos country, thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day every single day, for your daily go-to of all things Denver Broncos news, content, and coverage all year long, because for the true fan, there is never an offseason. We appreciate you so much, Broncos country. Couldn't do the show without you. Sayre, let's continue on with this fun little exercise here as we deal with the offseason blues. Which Broncos wide receiver will lead the team in receptions? Now, I think that one thing before we get into who we picked and why, I think it's important to realize that this Broncos team is very, very deep. And once we get to our training camp position preview, we'll talk about how there's 13 guys on the roster as it stands today, but why maybe the Broncos could carry 7 players, which is very a little unheard of. Wouldn't be shocked if they did 6. They have a multitude of guys that can play different roles. And with guys like Travis Fulgham rising up a little bit this offseason, Kendall Hinton being another guy who's consistently impressed, really that back end of the wide receiver core for the Broncos, it's deep, Sarah. So it could be anybody at this point that leads the team in reception. So I'm going to ask you here, for your opinion, who do you believe on the Broncos wide receiving roster here this year will have the most receptions out of everybody else?
Well, I know I had Courtland Sutton leading the team in receiving yards, but I think that, just this was something that I struggled with. I struggled with picking this because I feel like typically you lead a team in receptions, you're going to ultimately lead the team in receiving yards. But we saw last year that wasn't necessarily the case. Noah Fant led the Broncos in receptions, and I believe it was Tim Patrick led the team in receiving yards, or maybe it was Courtland Sutton. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, because we're talking about this year. We're talking about who's going to do it this year, and it's going to be Jerry Jeudy, in my opinion, leading the team in receptions, which could ultimately lead to him leading the team in receiving yards like you talked about. I just feel like there's so much to Jerry Jeudy's game that has yet to be unlocked. Of course, we saw him go through those rookie struggles where he's dropping a bunch of passes and really running without the ball in his hands and trying to make plays downfield, because we know Jerry Jeudy is one of the best after the catch on the team. And I think that's really saying something, because the Broncos have quite a few guys that can do some damage in the open field. And Jerry Jeudy, I feel like, Cody, maybe you and I are going to have to do some homework and think of like an and one mixtape nickname for Jerry Jeudy, because when he gets the ball as a receiver and he's in the open field, he kind of becomes like an and one mixtape, like street basketball player. Like he does all these different things. He's got such great agility, such quick feet, and he's almost like deceptive with his movements, isn't he? It's so fun to watch him in space with the ball in his hands. He's just very creative in that way. And so I think that with Russell Wilson, he's going to find that Jerry Jeudy is consistently getting that separation that you referred to in segment one. He gets open so easily. And because of that, I feel like he's going to be the trusted guy on early downs. He's going to be the trusted guy on third downs. I think we've yet to see Jerry Jeudy really emerge as a vertical threat in the NFL as well. So I feel like there's going to be so much to his game to be unlocked. I really do see him leading this team in receptions, playing primarily out of the slot, but of course we know he can do a little bit of everything. So I love your pick of him as the receiving yards leader, but I also think that it's cool, again, that we have multiple guys that we can choose from this list that really make a lot of sense for every category.
Well, based on what we did in segment one, here's segment two. Our players, we just flip-flopped realistically. You went with Jerry Jeudy, and I went with Courtland Sutton, and here's why. Sayre, I remember you and I were on this show last year after games, after losses, and one thing we were talking about was the offensive ineptitude, right? With Pat Shermer, with the struggling quarterback play of Teddy Bridgewater. And we were talking about the fact that it is a crime. It should be criminal that Courtland Sutton in various games only had, I think, at a maximum 3 targets in a majority of the games last season. Like his target share dropped significantly with Teddy Bridgewater. You were talking about it in the previous segment here, where it is time for a Courtland Sutton 2.0 breakout season where he becomes the guy that is just absolutely getting the football. And Sayre, I think with Russell Wilson here in this offense and with Courtland, who looks ridiculous, like he looks like he's in the best shape of his life so far through, OTAs, mandatory minicamp, had a chance to chat with him at his football camp this past weekend. He looks good, Sayre. Like this might be the healthiest we've seen Courtland Sutton, which could be a very scary thing for the rest of the NFL. And if you're an opposing DB, it's probably something you're a little worried about as well when you have to cover a guy like that. Outside of that, I strongly believe that in this offense, Courtland Sutton will see around 8 to 9 targets per game, which I think will be great. Like if he gets 8 to 9 targets a game, good things are happening for this Broncos team. And look, if that builds a scenario up where defenses say, okay, hey, their primary guy is Courtland Sutton, we're going to do whatever we can to take him away. As you mentioned, the Broncos are comfortable with Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, Greg Dulcich, Albert O with other receiving options that can step up. But in my opinion, the Broncos should come out this season and emphasize getting 14 the football, because last year he was criminally underutilized, and it was a travesty to see how underutilized he was, where he'd only get 1 catch a game, only on 3 or 4 targets. Simply unacceptable here. That changes with Russell Wilson. And I also think, Sayre, one thing that bodes well to maybe him leading in receptions, I think that he'll see a lot of mismatches and some one-on-one opportunities. Sometimes you think it's a little hard to get a mismatch on the outside, especially when we see the NFL evolve to this too high safety look where they're always going to cheat somebody over to the strength side if necessary. I still think Courtland Sutton gets back to what we saw in 2019. It didn't matter who was covering him. It didn't matter if there was a safety over the top, a corner underneath, and a linebacker playing on the inside. Courtland Sutton was eating, and I think he's going to return to form here in 2022. In my opinion, I believe that he will lead the team in receptions, but I do want to throw a little bit of a wild card swing in there. In your opinion, who do you think will lead the team in deep ball receptions, big time plays? I'm talking 20 plus yards. Who will lead the team in 20 plus yard receptions in your opinion, off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I got to go with KJ Hamler, right? And I think that that's definitely something that everyone in Broncos country would love to see. There's been those rumors about, could KJ Hamler be the Tyler Lockett, of this Russell Wilson-led Denver Broncos offense? I think that gets everybody excited because we've seen Tyler Lockett become one of the best vertical threats in the entire NFL. And KJ Hamler has some similar traits. But what I love about KJ Hamler and what I think is going to make him an excellent deep threat with Russell Wilson, we're going to get to see him working those slot fades that he was so good at Penn State. We're going to get to see him utilize that toughness that he has, the physicality that I think gets underrated a lot of times, certainly not by anybody on the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it does get underrated at times, the toughness of KJ Hamler, the way that he plays out there with such physicality on the field. And I think he's going to be super competitive at the catch point. I think he's going to be out to prove something this year. So I think that's kind of my pick right now, Cody. I know I talked about Jerry Jeudy maybe getting more opportunities in the vertical passing game. And of course, Courtland Sutton, Tim Patrick, they're both 6'4". I mean, they could both easily do that. But I think KJ Hamler will be my pick. I don't know. Do you agree with me on that one?
I think that's a fair pick, and I think a majority of Broncos country would pick him. I'm going to go with Tim Patrick. I just think that in moments where everybody's covered, I think Tim Patrick is going to be that one guy that has these opportunities downfield where he excels. And like I said, that was kind of his role a little bit a couple years ago while Courtland was wide receiver one. Now, things have changed over the last couple of years with Tim Patrick really kind of stepping up and being the primary guy in the Broncos offense, regardless of who the quarterback has been. I'm going to go with TP on this one as maybe the guy that's going to lead the team in deep ball passes, 20-plus yards or more receptions here in 2022. Broncos country, do you agree with me or Sayre? Do you disagree with any of us? Let us know your thoughts and more on the YouTube comment section or on Twitter at Roark NFL, at Sayre Bedinger, at Lockdown Broncos. But coming up here in just a moment, Sayre and I are going to debate and discuss which player on the Broncos wide receiving core we believe will lead the team in receiving touchdowns in 2022. You get that and much more coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about Built Bar, the sponsor of today's brand new episode, Lockdown Broncos. And Built Bar has launched a brand new exclusive flavor called Mud Pie. They have the Mud Pie Built Bars or the Mud Pie Built Puffs, which I highly recommend. 10 out of 10. Sayre and I both got a sample pack and they were delicious. It contains rich whipped cream and chocolate mousse smothered in 100% milk chocolate. The bars are soft and easy to chew. Not to mention, they're also healthy for you. 17 grams of protein, 130 calories, and only 4 grams of sugar. So try the new Mud Pie flavor today or one of the amazing 9 original flavors at Built.com. And to get 15% off your next order today at Built.com, all you got to do is go to checkout, enter promo code LOCK15, and that's going to get you 15% off your next order at Built.com. As we jump into the fourth quarter action, today's episode, Lockdown Broncos. Once again, Broncos country, thank you so much for making Lockdown Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. Be sure to check out the Lockdown Avalanche podcast after this show so you can stay in the know ahead of Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Can the Avs rebound from a devastating Game 3 loss? Check out Kyle Sullivan and Chris Maselli, the Lockdown Avalanche podcast today. All right, Sayre, let's continue on here today. I'm very excited about breaking everything down here in this fun little exercise as to who we think will lead the team in certain categories at the wide receiver position. Now we transition to who will have the most receiving touchdowns in 2022. This is definitely an interesting one, and there's so many contingencies. I think that when we give our pick, how might the season turn out if these guys are the leaders in that ballpark? That's something I'm interested in seeing. But, Sayre, I'm interested in your take. In your opinion, who do you believe will lead the team in receiving touchdowns this year?
Well, I've got Courtland Sutton leading the team in receiving yards. I've got Jerry Jeudy leading in reception. So I thought it was only fair, Cody, as I was putting together my show notes for this particular episode. I thought, you know what? Fair is fair. I got to make sure that Tim Patrick leads in one of these categories because that guy has been steady. He has been, I mean, ever since that he came back from that injury in the 2019 season, I feel like he's been arguably our best offensive weapon in the passing game, right? I mean, Courtland Sutton had the injury in 2020. Jerry Jeudy had the drops. Jerry Jeudy had the injury last year. Courtland Sutton wasn't targeted as much. Tim Patrick has really been that guy that has been making the biggest plays. And even dating back to when he first got on the field, remember against the Raiders and the Chargers late in those games when he had those huge plays and everyone was like, holy cow. I mean, this guy could be something. And he has developed as well as any player that you've seen. I mean, he's one of the best stories on the team. If you go research what happened to him at Utah and the injury that he suffered near the end of his career there and the way that he's come back from that and just fighting and scratching and clawing, going from being an undrafted free agent on the Ravens to then being at joint practices as a member of 49ers against the Denver Broncos and then getting snatched up by the Broncos. His journey is incredible, and he has been one of the best offensive weapons on this team over the last 2 seasons. And you know what? He's been one of the best players in terms of producing touchdowns. I know we talked about Melvin Gordon in the running back episode, but Tim Patrick is right behind him as the team leader in the touchdown category. So I feel like, we're going to see more efficient in the gold zone for the Denver Broncos this season. We're going to see a more efficient group of wide receivers because that simply wasn't their game last year. I don't know if it was the quarterback play or what it was, but the Broncos' top receivers, Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick specifically, they weren't as efficient in the gold zone or the red zone as you would like to see your receivers be, especially guys that are known for being kind of dominant 50-50 ball type of guys. So I think this year we're going to see Tim Patrick assert his dominance in the red zone, the gold zone, and really become that go-to guy in that area for the Denver Broncos. So maybe he doesn't lead the team in receiving. Maybe he doesn't lead the team in receptions, but maybe he leads the team in receiving touchdowns. I could see that being the case. Maybe 9 or 10 TDs this year from Tim Patrick, set a little career high, go out there and prove that you are worthy of that big-time contract. I think definitely this is a player that we could see do some serious damage with Russell Wilson under center.
I'm not opposed to that as well. And as you mentioned, Timmy P being the leading touchdown receiver for the Broncos the last 2 years, 11 receiving touchdowns in just 2 seasons for him, despite the circular carousel of the quarterback play from 2019 to 2020 to 2021. Timmy P has been one of those guys that has consistently stood out and stepped up in a big way when the Broncos needed him most. I like that pick that you took. I'm going to go with Courtland Sutton here. I don't think you can go wrong with either of the big-time contract guys that the Broncos signed to 3-year extensions during last season after that Raiders game here. But a healthy Courtland Sutton, in my opinion, returns to the top. A big play threat downfield. I think you'll have some big-time plays from him in the touchdown game, a couple of long balls. Like, it would be nice to just have a fade route where he runs 75 yards, catches it over his shoulder, runs in for a touchdown. But there's also the times where I think we'll see the Courtland Sutton catch a ball at about 15 yards, do yards after the catch and do damage and score there. But you mentioned the gold zone. It gets back to that analogy that we brought up, for the past couple of years on the show, and the Broncos have never really utilized it. But it's on when you're in a gold zone situation and you have 2 6'4" guys, 6'5" guys on the outside with Courtland and Timmy P, and you get a cornerback that's matched up, and based on your personnel, you can run different guys off to where they really can't double cover. It's just one-on-one. I'm throwing that ball up high to the outside, back shoulder, whatever it may be, goal line fade to a guy like Courtland Sutton and Timmy P if I can. And I think with the Broncos getting the gold zone, I keep calling it the red zone. We're calling it the gold zone now, Broncos country. I do think that those opportunities will amplify, I think, his production a lot more than it has been. And luckily for the Broncos, a game changer, a high quality caliber quarterback like Russell Wilson changes the narrative completely out of anything that these wide receivers have experienced so far in their careers in the National Football League. And Broncos country, let us know in the comment section down below, who do you believe will lead the team in receiving touchdowns in 2022? Is it Courtland Sutton? Is it Tim Patrick? Is it Jerry Jeudy? Is it KJ Hamler? Is it Kendall Hinton, Travis Fulgham? Let us know down below and let us know why you believe that is the case. And we just want to thank you so much for tuning into today's episode, Locked On Broncos. We're continuing our series all week long, projecting some of the season leaders. Tomorrow, we're going to focus on cornerbacks and defensive backs. So corners and safeties become under focus. Which defensive back will have the most interceptions in 2022? Which defensive back will have the most passes defensed? And which DB will have the most tackles out of all the players involved? And who might also allow the lowest passer rating next season? We dive into that and much more in tomorrow's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos. Set your reminders. We'll see you then.